Hello everyone, my name is Belina Rodrigues. I am one of the ESRs of this network, PANINI, and I'm here today to interview two of the other early stage researchers, Evans and Sui. We will talk about what they have been doing throughout the last 2 to 3 years. If they can then share a few stories with us, that will be great. So, I would like to start by asking Evans, what was your project about? And what were the main findings? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Belina. It is a pleasure to have this conversation today. So yeah, my research mainly was within an under-researched population, that is within ethnic minorities in the UK. So what is currently happening, considering given the increase in ethnically diverse population that we have, it is important for us to understand or to broaden our research, not only looking at one particular side, but trying to also understand this growing sector of the population and what we could do in terms of intervention wise to also support them to age more healthily. So with my research, we looked at social networks, eating behaviors, nutrient intake, and physical function over a period of time. So this was a longitudinal study to understand the profile of social networks, their eating behaviors, their physical function, and what were the key factors influencing this over a period of time. So we recruited 100 ethnically diverse older adults that self-identify themselves as Pakistani, Bangladeshis, Indians, Africans, or Caribbeans. So that was merely my research, and we conducted dietary recall, trying to assess what they eat and coupling it up with interviews to understand their eating behaviors by asking them questions about why they eat, what they eat, and what influences their choices of some food. Afterwards, we measured the way their physical function, that is by doing chair rises and other set of activities which we call the short physical performance battery, which is the SPPB, and a hand grip test and all that to know more about their physical function. And we repeated all these tests again over time, just to be able to understand the changes over time and what were the factors or how important these were in relation to other variables that we did measure in the study. So basically that was my research.
Evans, could you tell us a bit also about your findings?
Yeah, thank you very much, Belina. So there were 3 significant findings that we saw within this study. First of all, I wanted to understand the profile of social networks, the changes in social networks, and whether, if there was a change, whether the change had any impact on the way the older adults or older ethnic minorities ate or how they moved out and about. That is basically looking at their physical function. So over time, we realized that the social networks that were found, we grouped them into 2 major groups. That is an integrated and social network. That is where the person has more extensive social ties, and a non-integrated social network where the person has a very reduced social ties. And we realized that over a period of time, almost 20%, almost 1/5 of the participants had moved from an integrated social network, which we consider to be a very good social network, to a non-integrated social network. That is where they had a reduction in extensive ties that they share with either family, friends, or the community. With this, we found out that those that had moved from an extensive network, that is an integrated social network, to a non-integrated social network with less extensive ties, had less physical function. They had reduced physical function as compared to those that were in the better social networks or the more integrated social networks. And collaborating this with the qualitative interviews, most people that reduced in social network or had a decline in social network could testify or could give the story to them, so they could tell you that the last time you visited and now I've had this reduction in social network, and it was due to, as I said earlier, either family moving away or that. And they will go further. The qualitative data goes further to tell you or to explain how the impact of this. And we found that this was not only change, it did not only change, but it did affect the way they shopped around, the way they ate, and other things with regards to how they move out and about. Then another finding was trying to understand how, in totality, how they perceive what was healthy, and also what were the key factors they could attribute to influencing the way they wanted to eat healthily or not healthily, and all that from time. And we realized that we had diverse perceptions about how healthy eating could be. Most people found out that what was healthy was they seeing their traditional diet as very important and having to eat their traditional diet and considering as even more healthy as compared to either English foods or any other foods, even though they are in a multicultural environment as compared to others. So that is it. And another thing that we did realize is that over the period of time, the follow-up, we realized that more older ethnic minorities did report declines in social networks and other negative changes over the period of time, which they attributed to be affecting the way they eat and their physical function. Yeah.
So your study is a great example of how qualitative and quantitative research fit together and inform each other and the project.
The project, yeah. Thank you. Because the qualitative data, most of our research, not to point the limitations of it, but when most of our research have always been about the quantitative data, how much is this? We don't get the chance to fill in the gaps by trying to know why how much. It is this much, but why is it this much? So within the qualitative data, is able to improve or to make it to enrich it, to let us as scientists or as researchers to be able to explain more with our findings as time goes on. Yeah.
And you, Sui, what can you tell us about your research?
Hello, I'm Sui. I'm from the Free University Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So my research is about muscle health in older adults. And in the past 2 years, I'm looking at why having healthy muscles are important in older adults, and what is the current knowledge and the practice in diagnosing and treating sarcopenia among healthcare professionals, and how should we assess muscle strength in older adults. So today I'm happy to be here to share with you my findings.
And what could you tell us about that?
So we did a systematic review and meta-analysis, and we include 36 studies and over 50,000 individuals with age over 65 years old. And we are looking at the association between sarcopenia with falls and fractures. And we find that older adults who have sarcopenia, that means they have low muscle mass and low muscle strength, they have almost twice the risk of falls and fractures compared to those who do not have sarcopenia. So that means it is very important to look after your muscle health and have early treatment in case you are diagnosed with sarcopenia. An interesting finding is that among healthcare professionals in Australia and New Zealand, although sarcopenia is recognized as a disease in 2016 October, and we did a questionnaire among healthcare professionals in 2017. So we asked the healthcare professional to complete a questionnaire to test their knowledge about sarcopenia. So we find that they have a lack of knowledge about sarcopenia. For example, when we ask them if sarcopenia is a disease, only 15% of them answer correctly before an educational event about sarcopenia. And directly after the event, over 90% know that sarcopenia is a disease. However, the knowledge dropped again 6 months after the event, and only 60% of them still maintain the knowledge. So we think that only a single educational event is not enough to maintain the healthcare professional knowledge, and the education should be more and regular.
Okay. You were expecting higher numbers in terms of what they knew about sarcopenia.
Yes, I do expect them they know what is sarcopenia because it's almost a year after it is recognized as a disease. And although their knowledge increased a lot right after the educational event, but the knowledge did not sustain, which means that if they are not using their knowledge in their current practice, they will forget it. And the bad side is that the older adults are not diagnosed in the earlier time.
Okay, so basically what you are saying is that if they don't know about it, there is no way our older people will be diagnosed and then treated for it.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. So now it's my turn. So after all these podcasts where you have listened to me but you didn't know who I am, now I will finally present myself. My name is Belina Rodrigues. I'm the CR who is based in Portugal at the University of Minho at ICVS, and my research has mainly focused on the effects of diet on cognition. So to better untangle what were the effects of diet on cognition, first we conducted a systematic review focusing on the impact of dietary patterns on cognition as measured by neuropsychological tests and on brain correlates such as total brain volume, structural and functional connectivity, white matter integrity, and the results seem to indicate that dietary patterns are associated with cognition, with brain correlates, and in a few cases with both. So building upon that, and knowing that the Mediterranean diet was the most researched pattern in this review, we went to see whether the adherence to Mediterranean diet was associated with cognitive scores in a cohort that has been followed up since 2012 by the University of Minho School of Medicine ICVS. So this cohort is called Switchbox Tempo and includes older adults that live in the community and were considered healthy agers. So we found that higher adherence to Mediterranean diet is associated with higher cognitive scores, specifically memory and executive function scores. We also found that high adherence to Mediterranean diet was associated with brain correlates. Then we went a bit further and we tried to understand whether adherence to Mediterranean diet was also associated with functional status. And in fact, that was the case. So in the end, we confirm a few of the findings that have been reported before when it comes to the benefits of the Mediterranean diet in terms of cognition and functional capacity, but we also went a bit further, exploring in more detail other brain correlates that haven't been explored before and focusing on the well-being and independence of the older adults. So let me now ask you about the experience that was being part of this network. What could you tell us about what were the benefits, what were the things you liked the most about doing your PhD in this type of network?
Yeah, thank you very much, Belina. With PANINI has been a very, very excellent research group that I've benefited a lot, quite besides making friends and having to share other things non-research related and having to have other extra fun by traveling around. The PANINI has really provided me with very great opportunities where I had to collaborate with other researchers. For example, I had the opportunity to travel to Portugal, not only to see the nice beaches in Portugal and to eat the very good food in Portugal, such as the seafood and all that, but also, very importantly, to be able to integrate our research, to be able to collaborate with our research, to see how best we can put the two research together to be able to understand better what we're looking for. So I think this is some of the benefits of the network that to us, and also within the PANINI network, it has been very, very important in such a way that not only do we collaborate among us as well, we have had this opportunity of also having to meet other industrial partners and other academic partners. For example, we had the opportunity of traveling to Danone to see the production system, how their research translate into a product, which is very important. Lastly, PANINI has used all this, or the opportunities presented to us in PANINI has enabled us to be able to think about how, not just to think about just the research and how these findings are out there, but how do we communicate these findings to the public, and more especially, how can these findings inform on policies, inform on interventions? What is the impact of what we are doing to the wider community?
So, regarding the advantages of being part of this network, I have to say that for me the most exciting and the most beneficial was really all the trainings we got. Most of them are not usually included in what is a regular PhD program, and I really think that was an amazing opportunity to be part of this ITN, not only because of these trainings but also because of the other aspects my colleagues mentioned. But in my case, I really have to mention these trainings because these trainings ranged from pitching ideas and research ideas and product ideas, presentations and workshops related to patents and related laws, how to write grants, what was the procedure behind the EU policy, for example, entrepreneurship, career advice, business plans, and like Evans mentioned, we also had the opportunity to have some industrial secondments, and in my case, I went to Danone Nutricia in Utrecht, and I can only say that all these experiences contributed to a toolbox that I'm sure that in the future will be very, very useful. In my case, I also have to mention that since Yuminyu was in charge of the dissemination work package, I ended up conducting this set of podcasts that you probably have been listening to or not, but if not, please do so now. And I have to say that I also learned a great deal from these podcasts, not only because to conduct them and to then have the final product, which is the podcast you are listening to now, I had to become familiar with a set of softwares and devices that I haven't worked with before, but also because whenever I was studying for this podcast to get to know better the people I was interviewing, and even when we were planning these podcasts, actually helped me to know even more about the ITN, the origin of the ITN, and other interesting topics such as participant engagement. Lastly, I would like to also mention the multi-interdisciplinary aspect of the network. Within the network we have a range of expertise that go from clinical to laboratory environment, and since we met so many times throughout these 3 years, not only to train ourselves to convey the message to others who are not experts in our fields, but also to get to know better the others' projects. And now I do understand better when Evans talks about his research. I do understand better what Barbara says when she talks about her research. So all the times we met over these 3 years was also important to assimilate all this knowledge and the methods that were used, but also to integrate other knowledge related to this, obviously, as opposed to not having ever been exposed to this kind of knowledge. And you, Sui, how can you tell us about the benefits of working within this network?
So I think it is my pleasure to work in this network. All of the early stage researchers are experienced in their profession, in nutrition background, as a physiotherapist, as a medical doctor, so we can share our knowledge with each other. And the training are very great in our network. We had the opportunities to visit UK and to learn how to translate our research into policy, how to disseminate our research in social media, write a press release. And I had the opportunities to attend many conferences to present my research. So it's a very great experience.
Okay. I would like now to, if you could share with us like a funny story that happened to you during this time. Anything you'd like to share or interesting fact?
Yeah, I may have some interesting things to share. So in my study, we are measuring the resting metabolic rates of the outpatients in our clinic. So what is resting metabolic rate is the energy you need when you are just not lying down at rest, not doing anything. So by knowing how much you need at rest, and then when we also know how much activity you usually do, then we can estimate the energy requirement you need a day. So in our outpatient clinic, we use a ventilator hood, a device to measure the resting metabolic rate of the outpatient. And one time the outpatients came to the clinic with their family members, and they were so excited to try this new device because it is the first time they try it, and it is also new to the clinic. So the family members even took photos of the patients, and to keep memory, although going to a clinic is not something that they want, but this is a very special experience for them. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Evans.
Yeah.
Any funny story?
Yeah, a lot of funny stories, but I'll just share one of my funny stories that I had during this research. So most of my data collection was done at during home visits, where I had to visit the participants at home, sit with them, and interact with them. There was this interesting time that I visited, I visited one of my participants, a female participant, at home, and not only was she very interested in the study, but she cooked me an entire meal during that time. And after cooking the meal, she not to take away, but to join her to eat everything. And I could tell you the meal was good, but I had to finish everything to impress her. So I had to quickly eat everything. And when I was going, she still packaged a very nice sauce, like a pepper sauce, so that I could always drop in my food anytime I'm going to eat, which was really interesting. So it was interesting that she could prepare, interesting and grateful that she could leave everything she was doing, knew you were coming, took her time to prepare a whole meal for you to join her in the table, which was really nice.
Great.
Yeah.
About the funny story, like Evans, I have several. I will tell you about two. One of them actually happened while we were recording this podcast, and I will call it Panini Develops Your Resilience. So what happened? As I was sitting with Evans and Sui, we were recording this podcast in the conference room where the final Panini conference took place, and we did that on the day before of the actual conference. So what happened? The staff from the hotel was actually trying to arrange the room so it could be ready for the next day. So probably you're going to listen in this podcast that sometimes there are a few voices in the background and some glasses tinting, like ting 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 ting, which I didn't manage to delete from the podcast. So I have to say that not only I couldn't delete that from the podcast, but also while Evans and Sui were talking about their project and their findings, they had to be even more focused than the others with whom I recorded podcasts, because they were surrounded by other things that were happening, and I have to commend them for their effort, because they were really amazing. So thanks. So another one, and I will name this once a dietitian, always a dietitian. So probably something I should have mentioned about myself in the beginning is that by training I'm a dietitian. And while we were preparing this final PANINI conference, Kali is our project manager, and she's based in the UK, Birmingham, and she sent us an email asking for our dietary recommendations. And in my head, that meant how much protein I need per day, how much calcium I need per day. So I thought, well, maybe she needs the British ones. So I went online, I found them, I sent her those recommendations, and not long after she sent me an email saying that she meant whether I was vegetarian. And obviously by then and by now all of us know that this was the case, but in my mind as a dietitian, when I read dietary recommendations, I thought, well, maybe they need these for some kind of training, so let's send them. And just to say that she ended her email saying, always a scientist. And I mean, well, probably is not always a scientist, but always a dietitian.